Hello, everyone. I'm Shivi, co-founder and president of Kaaj. We all know small business lending is very complex. And when your loan officers spend same hours to process a 100K loan as a $5 million loan, it becomes unprofitable. We fix that. Kaaj helps banks and credit unions process small business loans better, faster, and profitably with 90% less tedious work and in a fully compliant manner. Utsav, my co-founder, will wear the hat of a loan officer to show you how.
Hello, everyone. I'm Utsav, co-founder and CEO of Kaaj. So as a loan officer, I just received this massive 300-page submission package. I already know how much work it's going to be for me to process this. Let me see if Kaaj can help me here. Now, Kaaj took this 300-page submission package. It beautifully split it up into individual categories, such as the credit application, bank statements, financial statements, tax returns, invoices, tax forms, etc. It also renamed it to the naming convention that I and my organization prefer. It also found out that there is a couple of missing documents so that I can reach out to the borrower immediately. Now, once it figured out the credit application, it finally extracted all of the critical pieces of information, such as the owner information, the business information, all of the little fields that are important and critical in a credit application, even from this handwritten application. Now, all of this is integrated directly into your LOS to create all of those leads, accounts, opportunities, and contacts. Next up, once it found out the business, the first thing that I like to do is just go to the SOS website and check for the status and all of the little details, take a screenshot, find out all of the details about the business. It automatically fetched the details such as the time in business, which is critical, the status of the businesses, the registered agent, the addresses, etc., and even got me a screenshot of the SOS. I usually do a lot of Google searches about the business to really understand what it does, about its consumers, about their website, their reviews and ratings, social media accounts, and a lot more information. Kaaj under the hood performed hundreds of searches on the internet in order to find out all the minute details about the web presence detailed and presented this report to me, which has a bunch of information from all the links available. It also predicted the closest NICS code or the industry for this business, another critical piece of information for me to make a decision and also price out the deal for my portfolio construction. Finally, I do go to the Google Street View images in order to assess all of the addresses that were mentioned on the credit application and on the business to understand if there's a storefront, to understand if this is a residential or a commercial address. Kaaj uses computer vision under the hood in order to automatically determine and verify the addresses. If anyone can guess which one of these images have a storefront about this business, there's a special prize.
Well, this saves him at least an hour worth of work on each deal and on all the front-end work. And he gets all the information served on his plate directly into his LOS.
Now, when I looked at the bank statements, it looked pretty good, and I didn't find anything to be unusual. It had the logo, it had the Chase account, etc. But look at this, what this fraudster has done. It converted the $783 into $78,000 into their opening balance accounts. This is an instant red flag, and I do not want to fund this deal just because it could go under. Kaaj under the hood checks for more than 25 features and runs different models to capture any signs of document tampering. Now, once it passes all of the fraud checks, I usually open up the entire PDFs on bank statements, go through each transaction line items in order to understand their cash flow models and understand what their cash flows are. Kaaj uses cash flow intelligence models under the hood to prepare a nice report here, which tells me what's the opening balances, the average daily balances, NSF transaction, negative balance days. It split up all of the true revenue transaction from the credit transactions and the operating expenses from the debit transaction to auto-calculate an expense ratio, which is, again, a critical metric for me to make a decision. I now understand where the business is getting their revenue from and how are they expensing and what merchants are they spending their money on. One thing that I'm always curious about is what are the existing debt positions? Are they having a lot of MCA stacking issues? What are the other auto loans, bank loans, personal mortgage loans that they have on their books or on their bank statements? And this automatically figured that out, and also the payment frequency, how much are they paying? Is the loan open, close, etc., just from the cash flows.
This helps him get a true picture of business cash flows without having to go through each transaction separately. And all this happens in less than a minute.
Next up, you remember how we had a bunch of these P&Ls, balance sheets, and tax forms? Now I have to usually go open all the PDFs, standardize each of the line items, convert it into CSV, and then analyze the ratios. Kaaj automatically spreads all financials, auto-calculates all of the critical pieces of information and ratios so that I can spend more time about the subjective analysis of the financial health. Look at the trends of the ratios, what do they really tell, what's the story behind all of these numbers. It can also show me all of the critical charts and graphs so that I can review these trends and analysis very quickly. It does the same thing for the tax forms as well. It can analyze hundreds of pages of personal tax forms, business tax forms, different kinds of tax forms, and help me understand what's been the reported income, the reported revenue numbers, and all of the fine-tuned details about a tax form and the analysis. Next up, it can also create or auto pull the credit report from all three bureaus and really understand what's the credit score and what's the story behind the credit report. How many delinquencies there are, what's the oldest age of the account, what are the comparable dates, etc. Now, all of this comes beautifully together into a credit write-up. This is usually the first draft for my credit memo that gives me the information about the company, about the history of their financials, bank statements, credit scores, etc., that I can use to build up my credit memo. The AI analysis section here gives me a lot of information and guides me in the right direction of where I want to spend a lot of time on. And finally, I want to check all of this against my credit policy to show me how many criteria are being met. You see how it took a 300-page credit credit submission package and converted it.